There we go, we're back. I left you in the lurch for just a couple of moments there as for what Value Rater's pick is here in the 2 o'clock last Saturday at Newbury. Like to do that on this show here, and we will be here every Tuesday night from 7:30 p.m. reviewing all of the weekend's form, of course, but not only reviewing the form and giving you suggestions to back, but previewing the big races. Coming up later on this evening show, Value Rater gives his own ratings to the King George runners, not least a 133 mark for Golden Horn. That would put him some 3 lengths in front of the field and an easy victory predicted. But anyway, that's to be discussed in just a moment's time. Before we do that, as I said at 2 o'clock, Forest Maiden 1 pillar to post. That just held off. Which one are we pulling out of this race to back next time out?
Well, I'll let you know, but I've missed I don't think that not a particular horse is more just to follow the form all the way through. You know? So the first 5 home, put them in your horse track and follow the form through. There's bound to be winners come out that way.
Certainly one for me was Cartier. It's the 3rd time out, and I expect a little bit more on this occasion, but it's going to be hanging around that handicap mark of something like 75, 76, and that is dangerous for a horse of this type. And Cartier, if pitched into something class 3, class 4, could well go well at that kind of rating. Moving on one to the listed Steventon Stakes, the JLT Steventon Stakes. Now, this really was a race where I'm not sure if you find it easier to give ratings or to pick the form, or even harder, because you had Mustadim, who went off like an absolute rocket, like a scolded cat, some would say, some 30 lengths clear halfway round the field. Was that setting a strong pace, or was it giving some unreliable watching for punters like you?
Well, I mean, again, you know, this might sound like I'm somehow talking out of the pocket. This was my investment on my server, much to dim. I mean, I don't know what was going on. It's not very clever, is it, on a Saturday afternoon listed race when, you know, I mean, even if it was a 7 furlong race, it'd been going too fast. I mean, this was a 1.25 miles, couldn't maintain that. I just can't understand. Sean Levy, a jockey, obviously could be going places. I mean, he must have been instructed to do so. I can't believe that he'd have just taken upon himself. For me, that is the horse that you can probably give just forget about his run there. He's run to a mark of 88 for 81, so just forget about him. But let's talk about the race.
The problem is, sorry, just to stop there, but the problem is with a horse like Mustadim is for all the time that he's running in what I would call a promising listed race, not one where there's horses regressing, but certainly progressing in the likes of Consort and Interlac, is that Mustadim is always going to be the one that's going to have to be leading to try and get in the frame, being the picture, you know, as opposed to taking a step down to a class 2 and be the real fancied horse to run a true race, be played a bit later, you know, something like that. So I just wonder whether it's the type of race with these improving dangers around him.
The reason I was interested in him on Saturday, let's not forget he was 3rd behind Time Test and Peacock, which is the form obviously behind Golden Horn. This is really good, you know, on his A game. He wasn't ridden like that at you know, at Ascot. This was just, I don't know what was going on really. And for anyone who backed the horse, hasn't had a run for the money as far as I'm concerned. And that's me as well. But let's
yeah, as I say, so Mustadim set the pace. Now, did this play into the hands of Interlac? I mean, of course, in terms of results, yes, Interlac came out on top. But to what extent, should I say, did this pace that Mustadim set play into the hands of Interlac or play into the hands of Consort?
Well, I think Interlac, I mean, it was in the lead on the chasing group. I mean, he wasn't ever going to live with that. Travelled into the race better than the second Concert, and really, you know, and I just thought he really asserted in the final half a furlong and got on top. Interlac, who's got an entry in the Great Vulture, and Juddmonte. So there's options there, obviously, to go with a 1.25 or 1.5 miles. Maybe they see it as a potential ledger type. Of course, this horse disappointed in the Guineas, but it was good to see the horse back to this type of form, because previous effort at Newbury when beating John Gosden's Kirby, is it?
Yeah, Keeble.
Sorry, Keeble. I mean, Keeble was second to Scottish, who we've mentioned plenty on the show as being potentially group class. This could be very strong form. I mean, when we look at the 3rd horse, Firefight, and I know he's been a bit busy for Mark Johnson, but you know, if he's run his race, Firefighter, and this could be serious Group 1 form, that's the question mark.
Okay, so Interlac's beaten Firefighting by 9 lengths, fair and square in this race. If Firefighting has run somewhere a pound within his you know, his seasonal best performance, then what are we saying? Interlark's around 100 and teens?
You would be, if you take this form literally, the firefight on my ratings, you would have the Interact run into the late 120s, which is Group 1 form. Consort, of course, was third to Glen Eagles. Ascot beaten 2.5 lengths. If you take a strict line of form between Consort and the winner, it would put the winner about half a length behind Glen Eagles. So this either does one or two things of the race. It either gives a great big thumbs up to Glen Eagles, or is it what it seems?
Okay, well, we are just going to buzz onto the Irish Oaks in just a second, but before that, one question, and of course, yes, Interlark, okay, looks as though it's going to be a Group 3, Group 2 back possibly even Group 1 performer. Firefighting sturdy as ever. Mustadeem needs a more fairly run race for himself. Consort, do you back it at 10 furlongs, or do you back it at the mile? Did it really stay 10 furlongs that well?
Yeah, I thought it stayed. I thought it stayed okay. I just thought the winner had a bit more speed, and then right in the closing stage when Frankie Dettori just put his hands down, I thought the horse was running on again. I couldn't say, I wouldn't like to put my hand on my heart and say he'd get a mile and a half, but I thought bearing in mind the kind of gallop they went on a very stiff track, I think a mile and a quarter would be absolutely fine.
Yeah, and I bet Ryan was sitting there wondering, whether he could have given it an extra slap or a tickle, but there's not many better in the job than Frankie Dettori, is there now? Of course, he rides the big one, Golden Horn, on Saturday. Now, that race we will be previewing for you in just a few moments. But before so, let's shed a bit of light on the Irish Oaks, which took place on Saturday. Now, yourself and I was very keen as well on Together Forever. But like Mustadeem in that Steventon Stakes earlier in the day at Newbury, didn't get our run for the money on Together Forever, you feel?
No, it wasn't quite as bad as Newbury, I must admit, but I was surprised. I didn't expect Together Forever to be such the pacemaker, and I've got to say, of all these ratings that we've got on your screen now, that Together Forever, I've got a performance mark of 109. That's the one to take out of the race for me, because I thought it was really impressive considering to maintain that gallop, and at the furlong pole, you still thought, hold on, are you going to be placed?
Sorry, yes, so I'm saying, with these ratings, at 109, there's obviously others that are rated higher above. I take it that you haven't hiked this up or improved it too much, because you can't simply judge that, because it wasn't raced to her best ability.
On this rating, going into the race, Together Forever, I had run into a mark of 119 when it was second to Star of Seville. So I'm saying on this performance, due to the tactics, the horse has underperformed by 10 lengths, which by 10 pounds, which in terms of how far the horse has been beaten, would have put it going very, very close in this race. But let's leave Together Forever. She's the horse that
you're happy to have a go at again.
Yeah, absolutely, to go again. Covert Love, we mentioned last week, and I was questionable evening meeting form at Newcastle. Got that completely wrong. I mean, had an official mark of 109. That's the OR bracket there. That's the official handicapper. The VR next to it is my rating, the value raters rating. So before the race, the official mark is 109. I've allotted the horse a mark of 116, which is, it's not great, for an Oaks, a Derby Oaks, and then it gets worse as we go down, I believe. Jack Naylor, who's been put in his place, she's been put in her place plenty of times this season, 113, Curvy 113, down to the likes of Speedy Bowler 107. I think this is just more proof of what we were saying last week. Okay, we didn't get the investment right, but we did kind of say, well, what sort of race have we got? Why have they supplemented Covert Love? Because they probably looked at the race as we did and thought, well, what is this? It remains to be seen whether Covert Love will go on. I would certainly be taking her on again against different opposition, because beating Jack Naylor and Curvy, I know Curvy went and won at Royal Ascot, but I did question that form then. But I don't know, it might just be, I think the girls this year are particularly, they're not really cutting it, are they?
Yeah, no, and I mean, I wouldn't expect you to have brought your archives of value ratings with you, but had you done so, Tagruda, of course, last year's real champion 3-year-old filly,
yeah, 1, 2, 4.
came in 124
Yeah.
to Gruder's rating was, so we're saying she would have smashed this lot to pieces.
I mean, the mark of, well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, a mark for a girl of 124 filly. So I keep going like boys and girls, but 124. I mean, I must admit that Mark Druger's 124 is like a cult rating almost for Group 1. She was exceptional for me, I think. But this just goes to show you that, you know, she would have been miles clear against these. But going forward, Together Forever, I'll be very, very interested in that horse again at the 1.5 miles when given a more patient ride.
And anything down here to touch on? Words, of course, you've put up at a very measly 101.
No.
Now she won a Munster Oaks, and it was thought that there would be plenty more improvement to come on only what was her 3rd or 4th start. But you don't expect her to be anything special?
No, a mark of 101, you'd struggle in a listed race. I mean, really, the overall of this form is, to be honest, apart from the winner, she obviously has gone up the ranks from a listed race to Group 1. And not very often you kind of see that progression. I just think this, and it might turn out that Covert Love goes on to better things just because the 3-year-olds, I mean, Lematissimo, who was second, and Qualifier, who won the Oaks, I rated them about 119 at the time. So you can see this form itself under that mark is still a good £3.
And there's only one 3-year-old filly that I think we've been interested in over the last few weeks. That was Diamonds and Rubies.
Absolutely.
And Diamonds and Rubies didn't turn up, but if there is a 3-year-old filly, despite value rates suggesting it's not the most vintage crop that he's seen this year, Diamonds and Rubies may be one to look forward to if she reappears before taking on the 4-year-old career. Now, Gruder was the horse that you had pitched up at 124 as last year's 3-year-old filly. A horse that is rated 124 and appears in Saturday's King George is Snow Sky. That makes Snow Sky £6 less in the official ratings than Golden Horn, who's rated 130. Explain how the handicap would work this one out, and if everyone ran to their form, who would finish in front and by how far?
Okay, so you've got, with form you're looking at, sort of this is a 1.5 mile race, and the official handicap, as I do, or any other handicapper, will work it out. It's £1.50 per length. So what's the handicappers saying is with a mark of 130 for Golden Horn and 124 is £6. So the handicapper's saying that Golden Horn should beat Snow Sky 3 lengths if he's right.
And it sounds pretty simple, and of course that's why Golden Horn straight at the top of the book, 1 to 2, 2 to 1 on shot. Now, Value Rater puts Golden Horn up here on your screens coming up now, a 133 shot Golden Horn. Surely on those ratings he's going to win by even further.
Well, no, because I've got Telescope in at 129, which is a marked Telescope up. Let's just go to Golden Horn on this 133. I mean, we spoke about him a couple of weeks ago. He deserves every much of that. Of course, won the Coral Eclipse over the 1.25 miles at Sandown, beating the Grey Gatsby. I maintained at the time, and I still do now, that was almost like a full of 1.5 mile horses that were actually running over 1.25 miles. Golden Horn, he's twos on. I think, and by my, you know, if I can see why he is twos on, because the general most people are looking at that race and going, well, if a horse is bound to be winning 3 lengths, then perhaps he should be 1 to 2.
Okay.
I suggest perhaps that this race is a lot deeper, and I think for Golden Horn, who faced obviously a very good horse in Jack Hobbs in the Derby, and is, you know, again a good horse in the Grey Gatsby. I think this race is the horse's toughest assignment, and if you weren't on Golden Horn at 4 to 9 last time, I'm not sure where you can take that price, around that price again.
No, well, I think obviously you look back at the Eclipse and you think, oh yeah, there was a challenger in the Grey Gatsby, and that was unquestionable. But if you look at this King George, you think, well, there's a challenger in Telescope, there's a Snow Sky, there's challengers at least 4 down the field. Now, the piece of form that is definitely worth discussing here, and it might well have been the most important piece of form for you, Value Rater, is Eagle Top, Snow Sky, Telescope postponed, the Hardwick contenders reopposing each other, battling it out at Ascot. Why is it that you've got Telescope on top, considering that he didn't run a shocker, but certainly wasn't impressive in that race?
Yeah, we've got this Hardwick Stakes, obviously won by Snow Sky. If you remember, there wasn't going to be much pace, and of course Snow Sky didn't really want to make it and did. And there was in behind. I think this was the race, and John Gosden had a bit of a dig at Adam Kirby and about the tactics, and maybe Eagle Top got lit up with it, maybe it didn't. But I've proved Snow Sky. Last year I had the horse running to marks at 1-2-4 when he was like third in a St. Ledger. Disappointed me a little bit in the late St. Ledger, but this season, you know, this horse has got to turn a foot. I keep on hearing people say he hasn't got to turn a foot. He has got to turn a foot, this horse. And I moved him up from the 1-2-4. I think this horse has improved from last year going into this race. What's interesting, if you remember back end of last season, Eagle Top actually beat this horse at it was at Ascot, and if you remember, I've just got it here actually. Yeah, Eagle Top won that day. Now he beat it that day
in a King Edward.
King Edward. Yeah. Now he beat Snow Sky that day 6.5 lengths.
Yeah.
If you remember, after that race, Snow Sky was due to go to... Sorry, before that, he was meant to be going to the Derby, and he had some setbacks, and that's why he ended up going to this race. I don't think Snow Sky was right then, and I think then as he went through the season, he improved a little bit. But I think this year, I think... Sir Michael Stout's got him bang on. He's got to be a huge runner, this horse. The likes of Eagle Top, we mentioned, that was second. I just think this horse has been overrated for that victory last year, when I think he's beaten the likes of Snow Sky, who wasn't right. He came from the back of the field. I'm not sure he's all that. I mean, he was beaten fair and square at Sandown. People said he'd come on for the run. He didn't really come on for the run. He stays very well, Eagle Top. What will help Eagle Top is a real strong mile and a half, but for me, Eagle Top, we got him on the
so out
1,
yeah,
2,
this
2.
is what I mean. So out of the Hardwick form, yeah, okay, you've certainly given the green light to Snow Sky and said good run,
yeah.
1-2-8, fair enough. But for the rest of them, you've almost turned it upside down, and you've said Eagle Top, no. Not interested, but I mean, even Postponed rated higher up there than Eagle Top, and of course Telescope, who really hasn't been the horse that everyone thought he was, is only £4 worse off than Golden Horn.
I mean, Postponed, I had regressed in a little bit. If you remember, Adam Kirby was right on the outside. The horse was a little bit keen. Of the horses in the Hardwick who I was more forgiving of the pace angle, I did think that Postponed this time round could turn the form around with Eagle Top. And if you remember Eagle Top, it was right in the closing stages. He only just got up on top from a horse that I know what you could argue that they both had been keen, but Postpone's definitely a 1.5 mile horse. I mean, the other horse, sorry, not Snow Sky. I mean, this Eagle Top, I just. You know, I can't have that.
Two more horses on the screen to mention here. One, of course, some will have their draws dropped on their tables at the moment, because it's the 118 plus value rated current 33 to 1 Shot the Corsican. But before we tell our audience why exactly we're even talking about the Corsican, let's just have a mention for Flintshire. Of course, would probably prefer it a little bit soft. This horse is ultra consistent. I mean, it must be of its last 6 or 7 runs. The number 2's appeared by his name for at least 5 of them. He's pitched in there at 1-2-4, there or thereabouts.
Yeah, I can't have Fincher. Never wins.
Yeah.
I know he's got the bit of Group 1 form, doesn't ever seem to win. I mean, if you put it another way, if Pepper's Moon was in this race, no disrespect to Pepper's Moon, and people will play on the fact, oh yeah, but it was Epsom. You know, you can't keep on making excuses. I can't see this Flintshire for me. He's one that I desperately want to take on in the race. Second to Trev last time, you could argue, well, that's good enough form. I don't know. It does seem to be Flintshire for me. Probably does it better on his own land than perhaps he does over here. I'd have to take that on.
Yeah, take it on maybe a little match bet with your 12 to 1 and 14 to 1 Shots Postponed and Telescope. But lastly,
we haven't really talked about Telescope, did we?
No, we can do. I mean, he's up there as a 1-2-9 shot, and he's got an official rating of 117. So I'm sure those at home would be dying to know exactly why Value Rater has pitched him in some £12 higher than the BHA handicapper. Why is that? Yeah,
well, last time, this isn't obviously based on his last run. These ratings are on the horse's best rating this year. Don't think I've been digging back 2 years ago to get there. This is on this season, because I think we have to look at current form, at least this season anyway. But Telescope, very disappointed when 6-4 favourite. It's got to be said that Sir Michael Stout, apart from Snow Sky, everything got beat, didn't it? Integral, he had a terrible Royal Ascot. I mean, it makes you think, well, if Snow Sky was feeling any ill effect from what the others possibly were, how good was that performance?
Yeah, arguably he's having still a bit of a wobbly dry patch at the moment, but Telescope still 14-1 does look some value.
I mean, the race before that at Newbury, I mean, a lot of people said at the time it's not much listed race. Dub Day was in second. He's beat it 6 lengths, admittedly in receipt of £3. That form has worked out. Winshire never 4 lengths back. I mean, there's some good horses in behind there and made them look pretty silly that day. I had this is the rating of 129 on its race at Newbury. Prior to that, you remember, perhaps Ryan went a little bit too soon against a horse that outstayed him, who went on to be placed at one of the races, I think Group 2 race at Newmarket. And it surprised me when I come to this rating. It was only because of future form. And I first thought, oh, what's he beaten there? But because of the Dub Day, if you follow that form through, Telescope beating that 6 lengths, there's no reason to suggest Dub Day didn't perform on its merits that day. If coming back to that kind of form, many will look and go, well, he's been 6-4, 8-13, 8-13, 7-4 favourite on his last 4 starts, and all of a sudden now Telescope finds himself 14s. I can see why many would give him a chance, but for me, I'm a firm believer that going into any Group 1, you must go there in form, and unfortunately, he doesn't.
Okay, yeah, well, the thing is that I'll bore people, if not anger them, that have backed him, just by saying that I still don't think Telescope is the finished article. And if he does run anywhere near to that 129, I'll be very pleased for him. I think 14-1 represents some value. But talking of value, what better value is there than somebody that tips up 33-1 winners? Could that be the chance with Corsican? Yeah,
Corsican. Now, you see on your screens now, I've got a 118 with a plus next to it. The reason for the plus, you'll see this in a lot of even the likes of Timeform. If you see the plus next to it, it means usually, and especially in this an example that I'm going to give, is it's been a little, you could mark the performance up from last time for either treble or running or whatever happened. Now, obviously a mark of 118 when we're talking of Golden Horn of 133.
It's quite simply not good enough.
Well, absolutely. You know, nowhere near. It's a stone. He would have to find a stone. But this horse last time ran behind Free Eagle and the Grey Gatsby, and of course the Grey Gatsby was second to Golden Horn in the Eclipse. Now, it was over 1.25 miles, which is obviously Group 1. It was a big step up in grade for the Corsican that day. He was held up. He was absolutely nowhere. I'd urge people at home to have a look at his last run. He didn't have a clear run 2 furlongs out. He was badly positioned. Now, we know the Free Eagle, the Grey Gatsby and the Western Hymn certainly wouldn't have been stopping in front. He made a lot of ground inside the final furlong, and he was really going on at the finish. That's the reason why I've marked it up from 118. He has won over 1.5 miles at Newmarket. Slightly concerned, not from a ground point. If the ground was good to firm, I couldn't have him, but you've enlightened me before the show tonight, so there's a lot of rain forecast at Ascot on Friday.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'd quite like to get a selection for both scenarios, but just to say on the Corsican, if you're battling for the Corsican side, is that I think he's only had about 5 or 6 runs as well, Value Rater, and that could well just mean that, you know, he's got some improvement in there, something that we haven't all seen. I mean, horses that he beat last time out, Cannock Chase, Criterion, Spielberg, these were all big international hopes that were going to come over and do it. Ecto, Galileo, Chop, great horses that he's got the better of, and arguably wasn't at his best on that day, and arguably maybe has a little bit more on the tank, not least if conditions are in his favour.
No, absolutely.
Let's talk about the conditions, because heavy rain forecast on Friday. How does that change the picture?
Well, it does. For Golden Horn, it's, you know, if you only look the way the horse moves, doesn't look like it wants any description of soft in it. I mean, you know, now that 2's on looks very short. I mean, Telescope with any description of soft, that horse wants it good for me. Snow Sky would be fine on it. A horse that stays 1.6 miles. Postponed, I wouldn't want to see it any worse than good soft. Flincher obviously would be fine on it. I think Eagle Top, and the Corsican would want a little bit of cut in the ground. I mean, really good to soft would be ideal for that horse, but it's very difficult, isn't it, as we hear on a Tuesday night, and we've got a few days to actually predict the ground. So I'm going to be with my selection tonight. I'm going to have 2 in the race, but under these circumstances.
Yeah, so 1 for each circumstance, if you like, yeah.
So in the circumstance that the ground was no slower than good ground, so either good to firm or good ground, Snow Sky would be the selection. However, if it turned out that we had a bit of description of soft in it. From a value point of view, not to say Snow Sky wouldn't handle it, but I think the Corsican around the 33 to 1 mark, in fact, just, you know, I could advise anyone perhaps backing both each way.
Okay, so as it stands, Snow Sky is the bet at 8 to 1.
Yeah.
Any advisors for each ways on Telescope, or as I say, try and play a match bet against the others, or you know, you're a bit not too keen on Telescope, you just don't know what's going to happen there?
Exactly, you don't know what's going to happen, but with Snow Sky, it comes with bang on form from a Hardwick Stakes. The horse was said had no turn effort. He did that day. He's beaten some very good horses. It'd be played on about the pace of the race, but you've got to be impressed what that horse done that day. I think he's improved from last year. He's the one in the race that actually doesn't come with any question mark.
Okay, and just looking back really at the Hardwick at Royal Ascot with Telescope, I don't know whether you were there on the day, but I had a look around the paddock, and yes, Sir Michael Stout applied the headgear before the race and then had it removed, but you know, got permission to have the headgear on in the paddock. It applied to Telescope and Snow Sky, but Telescope really was still warm in the paddock, on his toes, you know, really didn't look as though he was on his A game, and I just wonder whether he's got this sort of mental quirk as well that mixes him up. I think you're going to have to be there on the day to see if he's going to be the horse.
Maybe. One thing's for sure, this isn't like last time he disappointed. Sorry, it's not the first time he's disappointed, has it? There has been a bit of a patchy record,
yeah,
isn't it? But when he is on his A game, i.e. the newbie run, the day that he bolted up beating Hillstar by 7 lengths, it'd be very, very dangerous. The question is, I just don't like backing horses going to Group 1s. I'd much prefer, for me, as I said, Snow Sky.
Okie doke, let's just wrap it up then where we've been this evening and where we're going for the weekend. Just to pull away those pieces from last weekend's racing, we're more than happy to follow maybe later Navancia and Bellanoof continuing in their careers. Absolutely. Also on the Saturdays, a pillar to post victory for Forest Maiden. That looked a strong race.
Yeah, and as I say, not just the winner, you know, the form right the way down to 6th position. Get them all in your horse tracker, because that is very, very good form and they'll all be winning.
Okay, 235 Stevenston, Mustadeem off like a rocket, but don't fear next time.
Absolutely, the form's all there. You know, time test looks a promising Group 1 horse. That form is like, you know, it's a good £40 beneath, and as I said, it was it's just ridiculous riding.
And Interlock's a group animal, but same goes for Together Forever in the Irish Oaks.
Absolutely, give that horse a try. It's always a little bit worrying when now they've used it for pace. You start wondering whether it's always going to be used like that. So, but no, Together Forever, I'm sure with more positive, it will go very, very close in Group 1 this year.
Okie doke. All right, well, that's all that wrapped up. And just before we leave our viewers, best to, of course, just explain how they can get a little bit more involved with Value Rater, and also, having given them that and how they can get involved, just give them your class act for the weekend as well. Yeah,
we've got, obviously next week, Glorious Goodwood starts. So next Tuesday on the show, make sure you tune in, because we'll be looking at 2 races on the straight after the Wednesday, Sussex Stake. Don't know what the other race will be yet, but, you know, be part of the show if you've got any questions, racing topics. Obviously, we talked tonight about the BBC programme. You might have a view on that we will discuss next week. You can always do that through Twitter at ValueRater, or email value.rater@outlook.com. And the selection this week on the Value Raters Class Act is Snow Sky, which is currently around the 7 to 1 mark. But also, if conditions do come up on the soft side, make sure you have a little bit on Corsican at a juicy 33 to 1.
That's pretty big, isn't it? 8 to 1 or 33 to 1. You can't knock that. Well, Value Rater is done for the week. That's Tuesday nights all over, I'm afraid. But as Value Rater said, Goodwood coming up. Get into his service, his Value Raters Class Act service. That'll be running for Goodwood, giving you selections throughout the week. But it will be here on Tuesday night again, as Value Rater suggested. The Sussex Stakes, the Group 1 contest on the Tuesday, we'll be ripping that to pieces and giving you more tips for the week ahead at Glorious Goodwood. Good luck with all your bets in the King George, and we'll see you next week.